Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. Hello world! I'm Ran Elfassi and welcome to Shooting It Raw, the podcast that starts with a few photos, some cool people, and then who knows. In this episode, I'll be speaking with Sasha Haldane. Sasha is a very interesting person. I met her haphazardly, totally randomly, and here's somebody who essentially discovered photography really to kind of dive in to learn more, and she became really passionate about something, and hopefully she'll inspire you. I'll give you a hint. It rhymes with cutie spiders. Enjoy.
Okay, well, for me, photography means a chance to connect with nature. So I find it incredibly relaxing to get out with my little camera and be outside and take photos of amazing natural phenomena, usually insects on my part.
Sasha Haldane, how do I say your last name?
Haldane.
Haldane, okay. So first of all, thank you very much for joining me on Shooting It Raw. And one of the reasons why I invited you on was because I saw your images of the spiders, and somebody who doesn't like spiders who's listening to this podcast might be like, oh, really? But yeah, we're going to get into it, because if you were
spiders
are what?
Spiders are cute.
They're very cute. They're super cute. Once you get into it, the more you learn, the more fascinating they become.
Yeah, that's right. They are absolutely amazing. And of course, I obviously concentrate more on the jumping spiders than the normal spiders, but I find both fascinating, actually. The jumping spiders have given me a bit more of a insight into the other types of spiders that we see in Hong Kong as well. And so, I actually really now am interested in all spiders in Hong Kong.
Okay, so the first photo you sent, and that the one I've chosen is, I don't know if I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but Iposilla, probably Blare.
I'm probably going to butcher the pronunciation, because it seems amongst everybody that I chat to about the spiders, the pronunciation is totally different, and I actually don't know if I'm getting it right either.
Okay.
So I say Epicilla.
Okay.
But some people say Scilar. I mean, there's all sorts of different pronunciations. So I'll keep on with my pronunciations, even though they're probably wrong. And I'm going to say an Epicilla.
I want to talk about that for a second. Okay. Yeah. By the way, we're gonna take digressions all over the place. Okay. So you know how children, when they're learning how to speak, they'll say words kind of incorrectly or whatever, and you kind of correct them. And my daughter, and this is very common, would say library, right? Oh, I'm going to the library. And so we would always correct her. It's library, because we say, Canadian or whatever, library, and the library is library. And then so I was telling this to, so your accent, where are you from? You grew up in Hong Kong?
Yeah, I'm originally a Kiwi, a New Zealander, but I grew up in Hong Kong from the age of 3.
Oh, nice. My
accent is kind of a mix-up of much everything.
Yeah, so I was talking to one of Caden's, like a fellow dad, like another dad, and he's from Bristol, or he's from Bath, or he's from some place in the UK. And I was telling him about, how I'm correcting my daughter's, library, and he goes, "Oh, you mean a library?" And I was like, "What?" And he goes, "A library." And I was just like, yeah. There is no right pronunciation for anything.
Yeah, that's right.
So, yeah.
When I was a kid, I used to read quite a lot. And so I didn't have any guidance on my pronunciation there either. And I used to say Island instead of Ireland all the time.
Okay,
so,
sure. Yeah. So, Iposilla, how do you say again? Iposilla?
Yeah, it's either Iposilla or Epicilla.
Okay.
It could be either. Probably I'm saying it wrong, because when I go out with other people who are also photographers, sometimes they say, "What are you saying?" And I'm saying, that one.
So one of the good things, one of the amazing and really arresting things about your photo. So the first photograph is with a kind of a ring flash or something, because the light is even, bright. It's a spider that's in, close up image. It's kind of yellowish. You can see the hairs on its feet. You can see the very dawny hairs on its head. There's a bit of orange. So the body is a kind of a yellowish amber, and the head has some white, some brown, orange. Some of the eyes. So what's fascinating about these spiders is they have these two large front-facing eyes, and then and then on both sides there are two other smaller dark black eyes. And then the rear part of its body is mostly yellow with these white and black bands. And you can't see the fangs too much, but I assume this was photographed on a rock. It looks like it's on a stone with lichen.
It's actually on a railing. One of my patches is a set of railings, and there are a lot of jumping spiders on those railings, and that's how I managed to see a lot of them, because otherwise you have to spend a lot of time hunting through trees and leaves to find things. I'm quite lucky to have sites that I know about that have quite a lot of jumpers on them.
Nice. So it's a stunning image. It's stunning. So most people who are going to listen into this podcast who don't like spiders are going to probably look at us or just wonder why. How did you get into spiders?
Well, I mean, it's a longish story. I've always kind of been interested in spiders, and also in wildlife and sort of nature. And I went along to one of Robert Ferguson's exhibitions, and I saw his pictures of lantern bugs. And I'd never seen those in Hong Kong before. I didn't understand how it was. I'd grown up all this time in Hong Kong, basically my whole life, and never seen anything like this. And he very kindly directed me to where I could find some. And that started my interest in insects in Hong Kong. Yeah, it was a bit hit and miss in the last 2 years or so. And then I joined the iNaturalist City Challenge, where you go out and take pictures over the weekend, and you try and it's every city around the world who does it. And you try and take as many pictures as you possibly can of all the different species within your home city, and load it down to iNaturalist and ID it. And then the city with the most ID'd photos wins.
Yeah, Hong Kong's amazing.
Yeah, and Hong Kong usually comes second or third in the world with that, because the biodiversity here is astonishing. And I did it last year, and then I did it again this year. And of course, this year there was more impetus because there's not much to do. And just towards the end of it, I was going along a set of railings with my kids on just a walk, and I had my camera I had my phone taking pictures, all right, because of that step, I was using my phone. And on the railing, and the reason I was looking at the railings was because my daughter had noted that there were a lot of insects on railings, and I hadn't realized that. She's the one who pointed it out to me, actually. I have to credit her, because otherwise she'll be upset. So I saw this little jumping spider, and it was very sunny, and it was kind of gleaming in the light. It was like a lovely gold color. And I put my phone down to it, because the thing you've got to bear in mind is these jumping spiders are tiny. Most of them are the size of my thumbnail or smaller. The biggest ones are only as big as the first joint of my thumb. And a lot of them are like 3 millimeters long. All right. So in order to actually see them, I had to get my camera there and get the magnification out. And when I had magnification with my phone camera on, the little spider suddenly tilted its head to one side. I mean, it was a very almost human gesture. It was like, or like your favorite dog would do. It was like, what the heck are you? What are you doing here? Why are you sort of pointing this thing in my face? And it was a very contemplative look. And I just immediately went, oh.
Yeah, I know. They're so cute.
That's so cute. And so I was so wrapped with this spider, I started looking for more and more spiders. So I was taking pictures with my phone. And obviously, the phones are pretty good in terms of cameras. So I was getting okay images. And I was posting those up on the Facebook site, Bug City 2, right, which is the Hong Kong bugs. It's all the Hong Kong bug enthusiasts and people who just want to identify what the heck a bug is. The experts who are on that page will help you out.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, some of the people on the site started approaching me and saying, you're actually seeing some really unusual spiders here. What do you think about getting a proper camera?
Oh, got it.
Right. And getting some better shots for better ID, because, some of the spiders you're seeing there are actually quite rare.
Oh, wow.
So I went out and got, the thing that was in my budget was an Olympus TG6, just a little handheld camera with really good macro capabilities. And I basically started taking the photos, and I was absolutely rapt because, of course, I could actually see the details of the spiders so much better than I could from my phone. and so I've just continued taking photos of anything that I come across on the railings that looks interesting, or on any other site that I happen to be on. But I'm really concentrating on the jumpers and then sort of extending towards the other spiders, because those are kind of the things I'm most fascinated with.
Hey, have you gotten any images of lantern beetles that you can send? Maybe it'd be nice to post an image of a lantern beetle if you have one.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll grab one and send it to you. So you can see what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but also from my perspective, lantern beetles to me are by far the most beautiful insects I've ever seen. I mean, they're just so impossibly beautiful and colorful, and you look at it, and the first time I saw it, I couldn't believe it. And
it's just the weirdest looking bug.
Most beautiful.
Also the colors are absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
And especially also when, if they actually open their wings out, not only do you have that amazing red nose and the amazing green back, but then you also have the astonishing yellow wings underneath. So, they are absolutely stunning.
So, I've seen a couple of videos online of jumping spiders displaying some very interesting, sweet behavior. And I know, like, people who listen to this who haven't seen this are going to be like, what are these guys smoking? And I'm not stoned at the moment. Are you stoned? It's pretty early.
No. I've got early morning fuzz brain, but I'm definitely not stoned.
But like these videos and this stuff, I mean, the spiders. So what stands out about for you about the jumping spider that you find? If there's this one feature about them that you were to pick, what was the one feature that you'd say that is bonkers that people don't know about?
Ooh, the one major feature. I mean, their eyes are amazing, right? Because they have 8 eyes, and they have to obviously brain sequence the images that are coming in from the 8 eyes. And the big 2 eyes that you see are almost like telescopes, right? They go all the way back. They have lenses that are very much like telescopic lenses, and they use those for hunting with, because that's their primary sort of hunting tool is their incredible vision. And then all the other eyes around the side have they basically source movement, and then the brain has to take in all those images and all the movement things and make it into one thing that it can understand. It's interesting. In some ways, people have that as well, because they have the cones and the rods. So the cones enter and the rods on the outside, and our brains also have to comprehend all the images and the movement factors that are coming in. But the spiders just have so many more. So to me, that is absolutely astonishing. I mean, as far as the other factor that I love about those spiders is that they're so feisty, right? They are so brave and daring. Even when I'm coming and looming over them, a lot of them will pretty much stand their ground, and quite often they'll jump me. All right, so they'll jump my camera because they can see a reflection of themselves in the camera. If they see my hands too close, they'll just jump them.
Nice.
Because they're like, I'm the king here. So I really am attracted to that bravery that they show.
So just to geek out a little bit, so you've got this camera. Are you using a ring flash? Are you using how are you getting the lighting?
the lighting, and it took me a while, because you'll see, like, when you look on my range of photos, you'll see it took me a while to get a flash going. Because, as I said before, I am very technically incompetent. So just new stuff, I have to be talked into it a bit.
Sure.
And so someone actually lent me their diffuser, because I was finding with the normal flash, it was just too harsh. The images, I was overexposing them. It was just it just wasn't working out. So I went for a walk with another photographer, and he very kindly lent me his diffuser for the second camera, so I could see the effect. So I'm using the TG6 ring diffuser, which is obviously the disadvantage with that is that, sometimes it cuts your image in half a bit in terms of where the light goes. Unlike the huge diffusers that the big cameras have, where you can have this huge soft light diffuse from the flash. I have to be very directive with my flash and diffuser, not to have shadows across the spiders. But it does actually make for a much better lit photo. And then I think someone was telling me the other day that there's also an LED light diffuser, which I'd be interested in finding, but it's also just getting them from the camera shops here finding all the accessories.
I love that. Okay, so what do you do? Do you have a day job? Like, who are you? What's your life?
So I do a couple of things.
Okay.
I used to be a full-time criminal lawyer, criminal and human rights lawyer.
What?
I retired from doing that, and so what I do now is I part-time tutor at Hong Kong U in the PCLL program, which is basically the practical law. So I do things like litigation and advocacy.
Oh wow!
And that's my part-time, and then I also have a little business where I do. I mean, this is very randomly weird. I have a little business called Black Cat Badges.
Okay.
And I run a stall at various craft fairs, and I have badge making and bracelets and bracelet making kits for kids.
Oh wow!
Because I love color and things like that. So yeah, whenever there's fairs, which it's a bit tricky.
Right now is a bit
We just had one, but the next one's just been cancelled at Discovery Bay, for example. But I've got a stall going, so I spend a fair amount of time also making stuff because it's all handmade by me.
Well, nice to know. Well,
in between that, I do the spider photography.
Nice. So here's how our kind of histories kind of intersect very, very tangentially. One of my first careers after I finished my bachelor's degree was working for the Ontario Human Rights Commission.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, the Human Rights Commission had 3 branches, policy and education, communication, I guess. And then the other one was the legal side, right? So I worked a lot with human rights lawyers. And so you practiced here in Hong Kong?
Yeah, so I did. And so when I say that I was doing the human rights, I was doing a lot of work for on the torture claims section here.
Okay.
So, and I did that for about 3 years.
Okay.
And
does Hong Kong have a thriving torture market? To put it in a weird way.
At the time that I started doing it, there were a lot of claims.
Okay.
And I think there was a huge backlog with them because it wasn't recognized. Initially, people weren't recognizing that Hong Kong was a signatory.
Oh, okay. So
when a court case came along that basically said that Hong Kong had to recognize and process those claims, there was a huge backlog of cases involved. And I think it's probably, there's probably less cases coming through now, but there's a fair number still being processed because, as refugees come through here, either deliberately or accidentally, sometimes they just get dumped here, basically.
Oh, wow.
Because they've been coming through and they can't get any further.
Sure.
For various reasons. And then then they'll obviously be making claims to the Human Rights Commission and to the torture claim section.
Wow.
So,
and did you study in Hong Kong?
Oh no, I actually did my law degree in New Zealand.
Okay.
And then came back here and practiced, and then I practiced also for a while in Australia, wherever we were going with my husband's job.
Right.
I practiced in Australia, and then I was back here practicing again, and then down in New Zealand for a while, but in New Zealand I was mainly just teaching.
Okay. now that you came from New Zealand to Hong Kong, like, was it an easy transition to come to Hong Kong? Like, is it something that's relatively transferable?
I grew up here, so I mean, to me, you know, everything in Hong Kong feels pretty normal. But in terms of the processing of human rights here, I wouldn't have said that it was particularly progressive.
That's kind of where my gut would go on that answer.
No, it's definitely not progressive in terms of how you deal with refugees here. I do understand, but I mean, to some extent, it comes back towards when we had all the Vietnamese refugees coming in, and you know, initially people here were very sympathetic and did all they could, but as we got swamped further and further with more refugees, I think the people became less empathetic,
right?
And I think that's basically a fallout from that,
right,
in the way that we now deal with refugees in Hong Kong as well. So
fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next photo.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're responding to my question. You don't need to apologize. Okay, so the next photograph, also bonkers beautiful, is Telemonia.
I say Telemonia.
Telemonia, thank you.
And interestingly, that one is pre flash.
Okay.
Lucky sunlight.
Yeah, no, it's so good, so good. So the image, if I can describe it, again, it's a close up, and this is less yellow. It's a little closer to the brown, but a little bit translucent almost. And are a lot of jumping spiders kind of translucent?
Yeah, I mean, especially if under the hair, you'll see there are slightly translucent sections. Yeah, a lot of them, and when they're juveniles, you really do see a lot of translucency there as well.
Yeah. So in this case, the spider is facing the camera face on, so you only see 4 eyes. So you have the 2 large ones that are totally black, 2 smaller ones on either side. The legs, you can see the hairs, and there's a bit of red on them, and it's kind of it's just sort of checking you out, and it is just. I think once you get over the hump of it's a hairy, creepy, crawly, they're actually extremely it's very easy to anthropomorphize them because of the eyes and everything, to not sort of feel like, you're a cutie.
Yeah, those big black puppy dog type eyes looking at you really do, make you sort of melt a little bit. And it's, there was a cartoon called Lucas the Spider. I think there was an animation of a jumping spider, and it had huge puppy dog eyes.
Oh, okay.
A lot of people, when they look at my photos, say, "Oh, I remember seeing that cartoon," and I'm linking it in with the photos I'm seeing you take. And the interesting thing with the eyes, in comparison to the epicella, which we had the photo of before, is that you can see that the color is black. And the reason is that as the spider shifts its vision around, where it's focusing on, you see the eyes are black. So in the last one, the spider was only looking at me with its side eyes. So those eyes were black. All right. In this one, all of the eyes are focused directly on me, and so the black color appears there. So
the spider itself is this kind of slightly red tinged, translucent brown. It's got the very dark black hairs on its legs, and what's kind of neat is kind of when you look at the ends of each leg, like its feet, they're dark black, and they're quite petite. They're quite these small little. And so, for example, this spider is probably, I'd say, about the size of a baby pea, right? Like, they're tiny.
Yeah, I'd say that would be about right.
Yeah. So this is a pretty recent thing of you going out to make photographs of spiders.
Yeah, no, I've only been since April.
This podcast starts off with a notion of photography, right? Shooting it raw. So raw being a raw file. The premise is we all have these great cameras, and people are taking all kinds of photographs. But the question is, what kind of story? What are people doing with their cameras? And in this case, completely random discovery. It was actually through the Bug City group that I started seeing your images pop up, and I thought, wow, like these are just really engaging and sweet and fantastic. So of your photographs, what was the most surprising effect or reaction or connection that you've had where somebody said, oh, they came out of the blue?
Yeah, you know what I'm really excited about with my photos is because my spiders do actually look really cute. I've had a number of people who are afraid of insects or spiders now have a look at my photos and come back to me and say, actually, they aren't so scary after all. And I had there was someone I sing in choir with, her daughter was afraid of spiders. And I said, oh, look, I'm going to send you a couple of photos to show her. Mm-hmm. So I sent those photos, and her daughter was so interested and excited that the next time she saw a spider in her room, she said, it's okay, Mum, just leave it there. Right. So, I mean, I really love that reaction. I mean, what I'm really hopeful, I guess, now with my photos is that people will look at the photos of the insects I have and say, wow, Hong Kong has these amazing pictures. Mm-hmm. And we actually, obviously do more to preserve them. But also we just should have a better reaction towards them. We shouldn't be frightened of them. We shouldn't. Our first reaction shouldn't necessarily be to whack the heck out of them. Mm-hmm. Right? So to me, that initial reaction was quite surprising. Like that I got this. Oh, they're actually really cute after all. Mm-hmm. And now I'm really excited by that reaction. I want to try and have more people excited by it as well.
Was this image also, I mean, the spider is on a gray, it looks like a railing. So I guess this is consistent. It's on a gray railing.
Again, a railing.
Yeah.
That's the trouble is most of my spiders are on railings. So the backgrounds are a little bit boring.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Occasionally I will get them on a leaf or something, nicely green, but a lot of the time.
This is great. Look, this is where they're living. This is, and look, ultimately what matters is the image kind of works. Do you know why you tend to photograph? Well, so of the images I've seen, maybe it's just the ones I've picked, and maybe it's just because the female of the species is more pretty than the male. But do they tend to be females? Like,
okay, I photograph both, but the interesting thing is, and this is a technical thing I haven't yet worked out with my photography, to be honest. A lot of the males are darker; they're blacker in color, and so what happens is that when I'm trying to get photos of them, the light both gets sucked into and reflected very harshly off them.
Right, right.
So actually getting those little black spiders to actually photograph well is trickier. So a lot of my better photos are of the females of the species.
Right.
Obviously, there are species where they're not quite so what you call sexually dimorphic. That means they don't have the different coloration.
Yeah.
The different, even the slightly different shape to them, because you'll see, if you do have a look and I'm pointing out the difference, sometimes you'll find they're just slightly differently shaped or differently colored looking. But if they're very similar to each other in terms of appearance, there are other things that you can tell them apart. And some of the males I will have photos of because they're the same as the females and the same colors.
Right.
But yeah, it's something I still have to work out with my photography with those poor males.
Well, it's cool that I am really inspired by the idea of somebody who's just living their lives, and who knows what triggers, what sparks this all of a sudden this fascination and this impulse to all of a sudden decide, hey, you know what? This is actually really cool. And then you kind of jump in and you go and you get yourself a camera, and now you're getting more into lights. And I can see that part of your growth is there's a challenge of it in the sense of, okay, I'm challenged because I want to get a better and better image. And you're also be able to get the results. So you're having the incremental improvement, which is very satisfying. So yeah, like it's interesting that you've gotten great results so quickly.
Yeah, I think I'm lucky because, as I said, I've got these railings and I've got the spiders on the railings. I've got the subjects there, so it does make them a little bit easier to photograph and to find. I mean, obviously, I spend a bit of time galloping up and down the rails as the spiders move around. I often have to get about 20 shots before I get a good one.
Right. Of course.
But the lucky thing for me is that I've got, in a sense, the spiders on tap to experiment with it. And I mean, a lot of the photography, there's a huge amount of experimentation I've got to do because the sizing of the spiders, sometimes they are so tiny, they are half the size of my fingernail, and trying to actually get a sharp image.
And they're fast.
And they're fast moving as well. I mean, only when they decide, right, finally I'm going to stand my ground and sort of possibly, just before they jump me. Quite often I can get that good shot. And I have had a lot of improvement over the last few months, just, working on, what works with light and
no, I love it.
Like that.
Yeah, it's great. It's absolutely great. In fact, what you did was you opened the door with a perfect segue to the next image. This is a good one. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and call it a Scilar Female.
I call it a Scilar, although I have friends who call them Scillars.
Well, they're silly. They're silly. They don't know what they're talking about. and
I call them Scilars.
I'm assuming this is a female.
Yes, this is a female because the males actually look almost identical in terms of coloration, but the males have very hairy forelegs and very fluffy palps. That is those two little sort of arm things in the front, the little tiny ones. Those are the palps, and the male palps are where they store the reproductive materials. So actually, they tend to be sort of more sort of rounded and fluffier.
So how do you spell that?
Palps.
Okay, palps. Got it. Library. Yeah, got it. So these spiders, speaking, because we actually were talking about earlier about when you're talking about dimorphism and everything, I was thinking to myself, like a peacock, like the hen isn't very bright or very colored, and then you look at the male is like crazy bonkers beautiful. Yeah.
Actually, interestingly, the males are usually darker than the females in the sexualism sort of scale.
Yeah.
So that's on spiders, and I don't know if that's because they're trying to stay a little bit more unobtrusive in terms of being seen by the females. Right.
Okay, so let me describe the image. So the image is kind of cool because the railing is somewhat tilted, the spider seems to be on a tilted, flooring, I guess, and it's obviously. It's two front legs. So again, it's a close-up. You can only see 4 of the eyes. Its 2 front legs are high, kind of threatening, like I'm going to jump you sort of position. And you can see, so it's a dark, dark spider. You can see a lot more of the hairs. It's a lot hairier than the previous images.
The back of the spider. So this is one of our very colorful spider species. And so you can see a little bit of the color at the back. So you can see some of the blue-orange coloration that these have.
Sometimes when I've seen some photographs of these, they look almost iridescent.
Yeah, they are incredibly colorful spiders. In terms of, I don't know if people have come across the peacock dancing spiders in Australia and the incredible colors that those guys have. Well, these are kind of our equivalent of the peacock. They don't have those amazing mating dances, but in terms of the coloration, the 2 different types of Scilars are the really amazing colored spiders in Hong Kong.
Yeah, that's great.
And these guys are quite interesting because a lot of spiders don't eat ants, right? There's only about 2 or 3, except for the ant mimic spiders themselves, which obviously look like the ants and they trail after the ants for food. And then there's another species called Theania, which tends to eat ants as well. But the Scilars actually actively seek out ants to eat. In fact, they will go into the nests and get the larvae as well as the adults. And so those raised front arms, I think, has something to do with the same as with the ant mimic spiders. They actually have them raised up to mimic the antennae of the ants. And so when they come across an ant, you immediately see them raise those little front legs up in a sort of half defensive, half sort of I'm one of you type posture, I think. And then everyone will sort of scurry along and they'll go and follow the ants to try and follow them to the nest.
Oh, okay.
And when they see something that's threatening, they'll also raise up those front legs and wave them at you. So a lot of Scilar photos you get will be front legs waved.
Right.
Almost like they're in a hold-up.
So were you a budding entomologist 20 years ago?
No, absolutely not.
So this is all recent.
I did want to be a marine biologist.
Okay.
But that was, I've always been really fascinated with the sea. And in fact, I have a scuba diving instructor's certificate.
Nice. Are you now the village kook who's outside taking pictures of spiders? And then they're just like, oh, yeah, there she is again.
Yeah, the people who come across me regularly are like, what the heck?
Because they can't see what you're trying to photograph.
And I do actually offend a lot of people because I'm like, get your hands off the railings. They're trying to come along for their normal walk.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hands off. You're killing my subjects. I don't probably win a lot of friends in that respect.
That's awesome. That's great. Okay, so we have in Hong Kong, I think a pretty large, we have a tarantula species, yeah?
Yeah, we have some amazing tarantulas. They're all tiny though.
Right.
They're all very small.
Oh.
People needn't freak out about your tarantulas.
Okay.
Because there's no particularly big ones.
Oh, okay. The largest one I've seen is probably the huntsman.
Yes.
Yes.
So the huntsman and the crab spiders can get quite big.
Yeah.
Again, they're actually very shy. Those spiders, they don't really want to be near you if they can help it.
Of course.
If I'm trying to get photos of the huntsman spiders on the railings, sometimes they come out. There's a lot more at night. The crab spiders and the huntsman on the railings, but they're all really shy. Mm-hmm. They're running up and down the railings, and you're chasing after them trying to get photos.
For some reason, I have Benny Hill, the theme music in my head. Sorry.
It is quite Benny Hill-like.
Okay, so in your house, would you pick up a spider with your hand?
Yes, now I would. Initially, I was a bit worried about it, but definitely now I'm quite happy to do that.
What's the largest spider you'd pick up?
Probably the smaller huntsman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I wouldn't, for example, pick up a golden orb.
Right.
All right. Just because they do have a little bit of a bite. Mm-hmm. Right. So you have to be aware of, the bites are not in any way fatal, or in fact that dangerous. Basically, they'd give you a bit of a sting and then an itchy spot for a while. So you do have to be aware of that with the orbs. But again, orbs, those are the big spiders everyone sees when they're out hunting, when they're out hiking, right? Yep. They're the ones that sit in the big webs, and the webs are incredibly strong. Yeah. But they, when they're threatened, will try and go down to the side of the web rather than than at you. It's only if you blunder web accidentally and they don't have time to get away, they might have a defensive reaction. So you don't have to really worry about them because they want to get away from you as much as you want to get away from them. And that's the same with most of the spiders. But with the bigger spiders, I am aware that some of them have a slightly, will give me a bit of an itchy sort of reaction for a while. Mm-hmm.
I think just listening to you speak about your sudden sort of awakening to this photography, and then just kind of developing and getting closer and getting better images. So for the people who are listening to this who aren't in Hong Kong, they might be like, well, so for example, if you're in the west coast of North America, you might have some black widows, and then you have a big fear of those spiders, rightly so, because those are quite dangerous. But what would you say, from just because it's been such a new kind of process of getting into photography, how would you open this door for other people to invite them into taking more photos? Do you have any kind of advice?
I think the good thing about my photography was I've started with a very easy camera, right? If I'd started with one of those big DSLR cameras, being the technophobe that I am, I would probably not have got as into the photography because I just wouldn't have got the results as fast. So I would say for people who are just starting out like me, that starting out with a handheld, depending on what sort of photography you want to do, obviously you want to do macro, then I'd recommend the TG6. But starting out with a smaller handheld so that you can just get the hang of how to do it before you move on to the bigger cameras is quite good. The other good thing about my smaller handheld is if you do want to do certain types of macro, like with spiders and caterpillars and things like that, then having something that you can get close into your subject is actually quite good because you've got more control over what you're doing. If you want to take photos of butterflies and dragonflies, then you may need something with a bigger lens, because obviously you can't get very close to them. I mean, I tell you, I like taking photos of the dragonflies out at Bride's Pool. And in order to get close enough to them to get a macro shot, I literally have to commando crawl across the rocks with my camera. All the photographers with their huge lenses, and there's me crawling across the rocks like an idiot.
Like a committed person.
I do. There's a lot of laughter when I go out.
That's fine.
In that respect.
No shame. Just do it.
So, I think obviously it depends on what you want to take photos of, but having a smaller, simpler camera to start off with is really good. It's funny you're calling this podcast Shooting at RAW. Do you know I haven't even started shooting in RAW?
That's fine.
I'm so technically. So everyone has been pushing me. Robert's been pushing me, and this other chap, Andrew, who I go with also. They've been all pushing me to go RAW, and I just I have to get Lightbox downloaded onto my computer so that I can learn how to use that before I can do the RAW. I'm still shooting in JPEGs. So I mean, you can, even with the very simple, you can get relatively good results even with the very simple sort of format.
Sure.
And eventually I'll move into RAW, because I'd like to be able to blow my pictures up a bit further.
Yeah, I got it.
Don't be like me and be technically sort of
You're exactly what you need to be to get these amazing images. Like your recipe, your approach, your whatever, like you're fine. You're totally fine.
Do whatever you need to do to get the images, and work slowly towards becoming better and doing more of the technical stuff.
Sasha, that's awesome.
I wouldn't have got where I got if I tried to get a more complicated camera and been trying to work it out. Start simple towards the more complicated.
Sasha, thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me. Really fascinating conversation. And if people want to see more of your images, do you have an online gallery?
Yes, I do, on Instagram.
Okay.
And so the handle is Haldane Sasha. That's just no capitals.
I'll link to it.
HALNE SASHA. And that's so far. Otherwise, you could also have a look on the Bug City 2 Facebook page. But you do have to join that one. It's not to join; it's just having an interest in bugs. Sure. But my Instagram page is public, so anyone can have a look and ask me any questions you want about what I'm taking the photos of. I'm always happy to answer.
Thanks for joining me for this call. Listen, I'll see you around. And then next time I'm walking around Bride's Pool and I see some woman crawling around the rocks, I'll wave hi.
Bye.
And that was that. I really hope you also enjoyed listening in. If you did, please share it. Sharing is caring, and it's the best way to ensure the episodes keep being made. If you want to know more about Sasha, check out the episode notes for her links. If you'd like to see the episode photos, be sure to visit the website, the podcast links, YouTube channel, Instagram page, and maybe even at the bottom of a glass of beer. Shooting It Raw was hosted by me, Ran Alfassi, and is produced by Service Detox Consulting. Mixed in Hong Kong, Shooting It Raw is sometimes distributed by Noam Chomsky. So keep learning, keep exploring, keep becoming a better person. And I'm here if you need me. Bye!